Hey everybody, it's Uncle Grumpy and welcome to Grumpy Tonight. We're doing things a little bit different tonight. I'm here in Oklahoma City and I've got two attorneys with me. I like to go everywhere with attorneys. Sometimes they're handy, not often, but they are. This is Julie Ezell and Collin Rocket with Canna Law Group.
Yes.
Here in Oklahoma City. And you guys have met Julie before. She's been on the show before. Tonight we're going to try something a little different. Tonight we're going to try and do a call-in. We're going to let you guys call in and ask some questions. So what I'm going to do is tell you to post on here. I'll open up the video. Post on here that you have a question, and I'll message you my phone number, and you can call it, and we're going to set that by the mic, and we're going to hear you, okay? It'll be just like calling into a radio show, and you can ask them your question. If we do it that way, we won't get a bunch of people trying to call in at once. I can just send each person the number and take one call at a time. But before we get started, I want to thank our sponsors, and I want to start by thanking Moto here at the Bunker here in Oklahoma City, as well as always, the Greens Bakery in Oklahoma City, Sweet Leaf Dispensary in Bartlesville, Canna Law Group right here next to me, and Max's Garage in downtown Muskogee. If it wasn't for the sponsors, we wouldn't be here to answer these questions, and I wouldn't be at the Capitol trying to do what I can do to help this situation. So support the sponsors that support us, please. Okay, folks. Julie, you want to introduce yourself again and say something before we get started?
Yeah.
And if somebody has a question, message that into the group or into the video, and I'll send you the message, or I'll send you the phone number while we're talking.
My name is Julie Ezell. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law for 12 years. I currently work with Collin Rocket. We have a firm that is dedicated to medical marijuana businesses and patients, Canna Law Group. And just excited to be here again tonight and hang out with Grumpy. He's told me I can't be funny, so I'm not really sure what I'm going to say. Tom?
I'm Collin Rocket. I've been practicing for 6 years next month. Before I did medical marijuana, I did primarily criminal defense and am enjoying getting into this industry.
So, criminal defense here in Oklahoma City?
Well, mainly here in Oklahoma City. I did. I do all over the state, though.
Did you do many that were cannabis charges?
Oh, gosh, all the time. Like, that's more prevalent than any other drug.
Did that have anything to do with where you ended up now? I mean, what sort of things did you see? Is there anything you can tell us about that we might want to hear about?
Just a lot of people getting charged with possession, ending up with a lot of fines or on probation.
Oh, sorry about that.
Just a moneymaker. It was a way for...
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, kind of like DUIs. DUIs make a lot of money for the city, the county, the state.
Yeah.
So
it's just a money generator. So you've been watching them destroy lives for years, generating money.
unfortunately.
Julie, I see you've got some notes there. I want to talk to you guys about what happened yesterday with the passage of that bill through the Rules Committee in the Senate. Everybody knows I'm not happy about it. One of the reasons I'm not happy is because I keep hearing this called the Unity Plan. And there's so little of this that was anything that we put together this summer. Or let me maybe rephrase that. There's a few key things added to it that destroy so much of what we worked on last summer. So I'm bothered by the title for starters. But Julie, can you tell us some of what you find wrong with it?
With the current Unity Plan?
Without being funny? No, I'm kidding.
Before I get started, Chris, real quick, I just wanted to say that, I know a lot of legislators and people like you and Norma and a lot of other interested people have put a lot of time into this, and I know it's not easy to write this kind of legislation and to bring people to consensus. And I appreciate the work that everybody's put in on this. Like you, I do still see some pretty significant issues. I'll just kind of highlight the big ones, and then Collin, jump in whenever you think it's appropriate. One that really bothers me the most is that the Department of Health, under this Unity plan, has the ability to literally revoke a commercial or patient license for anything. I believe the wording is something like, or any other reason deemed appropriate by the department. And
right.
That gives, just a complete...
So it gives a list of reasons followed by and any other reason we can think of.
Because you have a purple shirt on, because you have an ugly beard, whatever it is.
Hey, wait a second.
Sorry.
There you go, trying to be funny again.
And, that's, a complete abuse of power, in my opinion. There's another provision in there that allows the department to make inspections without notice, which, I'm all for this being a regulatory program, but they can make inspections without notice if they believe that there might be destruction of evidence. In law school, we call that unauthorized search and seizure without a warrant. You're required to have a warrant, but this literally allows them to go in for anything. And really not have to articulate a reason. They just have to think there might be destruction of evidence and go in and, go through everything in these businesses.
So this is stuff that we didn't even, as patients, these aren't even the things we're upset about yet.
Yeah, I'm not even to that yet.
Yeah, you haven't even gotten to those yet.
Haven't even gotten to that yet. Like you said, hitting on some of the issues that concern patients, in here they set up this medical marijuana use record. I can't, the dispensaries go in and verify.
Right.
Oh, like
the
the
verification
database.
system.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this bill allows any physician to go in there and look at your records. So,
any one of your physicians.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, but not your recommending physician. It could be
right.
any physician. Which, you don't, of course, your medical, whenever you see a doctor, it's important to tell them, what medicines you're taking, if it's appropriate to that visit, but it's not appropriate for every physician you see to be able to go in and, see, and on this registry, it's not only that you have a card, but with the seed to sale, it's going to track every single transaction that you make. Every time you buy, it's going to be there. And the wording allows, I believe, the dispensaries to keep that documentation for 2 years, but the state keeps it forever. They're going to have, records of what you've bought for the rest of your life. And that, to me, seems like an invasion of privacy.
Yeah, why would they need to know that?
And not what this is supposed to be.
Right.
Certainly not what this is supposed to be.
Right. Some other concerns are that a recommending physician can then terminate the recommendation they've made for a patient. They see somebody, give them a recommendation, 60, 90 days later, they call up the health department and say, I don't think they need it anymore. And this is really concerning because we have a lot of pain management doctors who are dropping their patients or making them choose in between medical marijuana or, opiates or pain management, and leaving these people, without medications to wean down off and going through withdrawals.
Well, that's the same issue that's going to cause. Those doctors, those pain management doctors, what they're going to be able to do with this is they're going to be able to make a blanket request. They'll have to fill out one for each patient, but they'll be able to make a request of every one of their patients to the health department without your knowledge, and ask the health department if you have a medical marijuana card. They can then add that to their reasons for dropping you. And the next time you come in, you leave without medicine. Now, as outrageous as that sounds, it's happening every day in this state. It's been happening for months, and it continues to happen. So we can't let anyone other than the doctor that wrote the recommendation fix this. Now, Eccles has spoke of shell bills he has to fix some of this. I'm hoping we can get some of this addressed. But other than the caregiver part, which I've helped put some language together for, I haven't seen any other language to fix any other parts. So I'm a little concerned about the time frame, because I understand from what I've been told, we only have one more week to get anything out of its committee of origin, or it's too late this year.
It's not completely too late. They can, every year legislators come up with bills, shell bills that they, take into committee, and they've got titles stricken on them, and they can bring them out at the last minute and make them into anything they want. But the chance of that happening on something like medical marijuana are slim to none. It's got to be something that you have high agreement on between the Senate and House, and I don't think that medical marijuana is one of those.
No, I don't think we have a lot of agreement.
And I guess I personally don't understand why not try to address it all and fix it all in one comprehensive bill?
Yeah, like another thing that this doesn't cover would be DHS or taking the kids because you have a patient card or using, you're using medical marijuana. It doesn't address that issue. And there are a number of other things that it seems like it covers a lot of stuff, but leaves out a lot of the important parts.
So it has nothing in there at all about foster care or DHS or anything like that whatsoever. Did anybody find anything about that?
I don't recall anything when I read through it.
Okay, because I was under the impression in meetings that some of that would get put back in there. Did nothing get put back in there? I know Rachel Bissett's reached out and said that she couldn't find anything. Have you guys come across anything?
I don't recall it.
So there's one more thing we need to add to the list. You've got more here. What else have you got?
Yeah, something that's very popular right now is the patient drives at dispensaries. They, bring a lower cost physician in to do these recommendations for people, and there's a provision in here that prohibits that. Physicians can't be on location or associated with a dispensary, and the way it's worded would stop those patient drives, which are a low cost way for patients to get their card. And there's also, there's two other provisions, patient related is, the restrictions on caregiver grow. A caregiver can grow for a patient at the patient's property, but the caregiver can't grow at their own property.
Right, which doesn't do any good. It
well,
really
under
doesn't.
788, I want to say it says that, caregivers have all the rights that the patient would.
Right.
So if that were to be true, then they should be able to grow
Right,
home.
according to this, they would have all the rights except for.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that Collin and I were talking about earlier that really bothers us about this Unity bill is being billed as a bill that doesn't change or detract 788 in any way, and that's simply not true.
I actually heard Senator McCourtney say that exact same thing, that it doesn't alter 788.
And just a quick example of that, in 788, Department of Health has 14 days to issue business licenses. In this bill, it's 90 days. I mean, that's just, you can't argue two numbers, 14 to 90. There's a change. We've lost, caregiver rights. Caregivers right now can grow for their patients. Under here, as Collin pointed out, they can't. And we've also got a lot of restrictions here on home growers that, want to do processing.
Weren't we? You said something about that the other day, about the restriction on flammable gases being used.
Yeah,
in home
the
grow
restriction
processing.
on home grow or on home processing has been talked about for over a year, and that was just to limit any explosive gases. And for the most part, most people were okay with it during that time. I mean, I haven't noticed a big uproar about changes on that. Now, from what I understand, you're supposed to be able to do it if you have a closed loop system. That's all they ask. Well, that's how they do it professionally anyway, so...
Well, an open loop system is just going to blow you up.
What's that?
I said an open loop system is just going to blow you up.
Well, that would be the risk, and that would be why I thought it seemed reasonable to allow that. It was a give and take, and we had to give up something, and that seemed like an easy give.
What was
I was sitting.
What was the change? Or what was
I
the
don't
trade-off
remember
then?
at the time. I at that point, I can tell you, everything we were doing was fighting the concept of a home inspection.
Oh, okay.
We were fighting off the idea that somebody was going to come into our house if we wanted to grow our own, and we were going to have to let them in our house. And they were writing rules like 3468 that allowed them to come in your house, and it talked about how you had to have everything stored. I mean, just pretty much if they came in and found any paraphernalia, they could have, taken away your kids and taken your house, is what it seemed. You were going to lose your license.
Why is there not the same uproar for opioids? Why are they not wanting to come in and count your pills? I mean,
well, but take it from an opioid patient. They are trying to limit us enough to where they're keeping count. They're just doing it in the doctor's office.
yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, no, they are. I mean, I had that issue recently where, because I have to come all the way here to see a doctor, because my doctor back by where I live dropped me for getting my card. Now, he let me have dirty tests for 3 years. He watched me get healthy. He watched me drop 50 pounds and get happy. And then we passed 788. I got my card, and he gave me 60 days, and that was it. So I had to get a doctor here. So I have to come all the way here. So it's extremely inconvenient. And in racing to the Capitol one time, I didn't fill my prescription that day. And so I wasn't out because I try not to take any more than I need. So I went on and drove home. Well, it was 2 or 3 days before I filled them. And then the same thing happened the next month. And then when I went to fill them, they said I was trying to fill them too early because I had just left the doctor's office. They're counting my pills. They're deciding when I can and can't fill them.
Right.
Now I got them filled. And this last month, I went to fill them again. And I got this, because it was February's supply. I got this notice that my insurance wanted pre-authorization paperwork. So I spent 2 weeks trying to get that done before I got that prescription filled. Now my prescriptions don't match up with each other or with my doctor appointment. And the reason why that's a problem is because when you go into the doctor's office and they figure that out after they've made sure they all match up, they freak out. They do freak out. Those are days you end up having to take drug tests. Those are days they end up wanting to count your pills. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. Sorry.
I want to say that part of the physician's oath and the Hippocratic oath is, do no harm. And we're seeing these doctors drop people left and right. I mean, how is that not harm?
Yeah, and as she was pointing out earlier, this particular part of this will allow pain management doctors who didn't write your recommendation to look up and see if you have one and then use that to drop you. And that's a business decision they're making. That's not a medical decision. So, and you end up traveling across the state to continue your medication, or what? Crawl in the hole and die?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
They kind of leave you with no choices. Go ahead.
One of the things that I know has, been a hot topic of conversation is the, use of medical marijuana while on the job. And Collin, you were there when this House bill was heard and kind of heard some feedback about that safety sensitive position exception. Can you, kind of talk about that and what you heard when you were there?
Well, I wasn't there for that part actually, but
We'll make it up, Collin.
allow me to improvise. My understanding is that any job that involves heavy machinery,
Power tools? Is
Power
it power
tools.
tools?
I think it would include food handlers. So anybody?
No, they removed that.
Did they
That was
remove
the
it?
part they removed. That was the one part they removed.
Let's see.
It's pharmaceuticals, firearms. These are the.
I'm having
Okay.
internet troubles here. Sorry, folks. My phone isn't getting a good connection, so I haven't taken a call yet. So,
So that would safety sensitive.
sorry,
means-
I hate to interrupt.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, if you want to look on the front of the OCNN page, has the phone number. Okay. If you have a question, look up there. It's 918-304-1956. Just look on the front page, and we'll see how that works since I'm having an internet trouble. Go ahead.
This is a lot more inclusive than I thought or I originally remembered. So, safety sensitive job means anything that really involves dealing with hazardous materials, motor vehicle, equipment, machinery, power tools.
Would that include like a pizza delivery driver?
I mean,
The car's
under
pretty
this,
heavy
yeah.
equipment.
Yeah, I mean, it
The
says
car is
Motor
pretty heavy
vehicle.
equipment. Yeah.
Yes,
or other vehicle.
Or
go
other
kart
vehicle.
racer.
Yeah, what if
So Uber drivers, taxi drivers, grocery store or grocery deliver people.
firefighters, operation, maintenance, or oversight of critical services and infrastructure, including but not limited to gas, electric, and water utilities, power generation, or distribution.
Yeah, and essentially, the bill here says, that people can use. You can't be fired for having a medical marijuana card. You can be fired for using marijuana on the job, but these safety sensitive positions are, kind of carved out of that. And in addition, when I read through this before coming over here, something I hadn't caught on my first read was that they, anybody who, say you're terminated for having a card even though you weren't using it at work, or you are in one of these safety sensitive positions and lose your job because of this or something, they point in here to this Oklahoma Standards for Workplace Drug and Alcohol Testing Act as your exclusive remedies. And so if you were a person who was terminated or didn't get a job in violation of this statute, they've limited what you can sue for and recover greatly under this. So you can't, you can go back and get actual lost wages, but if you never started working somewhere, you don't really have lost wages. And so they've greatly limited employers' exposure on this provision. Also, was it at the committee hearing, did we hear that it was the state chamber that really was pushing these safety sensitive?
Yeah, and last summer in the joint committee that we all sat through for all those weeks, the Chamber of Commerce spoke, and the lady from the Chamber of Commerce said that they felt like anybody who ever tested positive for THC was impaired and therefore should be subject to termination if the employer sees fit. That's exactly what this does. That's exactly what this does. There are so many gives in here, so many handouts to the reefer madness people that we listened to this summer. There really is.
Yeah. I mean, and the way it's written right now, if you're in one of these safety sensitive positions, you have no rights when it comes to medical marijuana. Go get your opiates, be zoned out on the job. You can do that, but you can't you can't even, the license.
Now, Johnny on here says that you can't use CO2 at home, but you can go to Walmart and buy a CO2 soda machine. So he has a good point there. He has a very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, the restrictions on what you can do at home, I was just going to... Oh, that does remind me as we're going through here, I did make this is kind of funny. I made a list of the negatives I see in this bill and the good things, and I did see one good thing here.
Yeah,
so,
I like that.
To call attention to that, there is a provision in here that says, municipalities and other governing bodies that are not the state cannot adopt ordinances or rules that are more restrictive than they are at the state level, and they can't require patients or caregivers to obtain another, city or county permit or license. I want to say that it's the city of Alva that requires an additional patient license and inspection of the home grow. And so this is going to stop that.
They're also currently requiring that in Yukon.
Is anybody signing up for that? Is anybody? I'm asking a serious question. Does anybody know anybody out there that has signed up for one of these city permits? I'm just curious. You don't have to say your name. Maybe send me a private message. I promise not to tell anybody your name. I just want to know how the process went and how well you know your local law enforcement now. Because I'm betting fairly well. I'm betting they're generally behind you in traffic, on your way to the store, and frequently passing by your house.
Yeah, I've had people tell me, like in smaller towns and such, that since they got their license, or the town has become aware that they're a patient, the law enforcement presence around their house is upped dramatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Harassment.
Rick on here just asked, let me introduce you two again. This is the lawyers from Canna Law here in Oklahoma City, or Canna Law Group here in Oklahoma City, Julie Ezell and Collin Rocket. It's a heck of a last name.
Thank you.
That's handy. You like use that? Do you like have a rocket on your card or anything? Or
I don't know. I haven't gone that route with the advertising. I did have a judge ask me one time on the record, like during motion hearings in this awful assault and battery case, if that was my real name.
Yeah.
Like after I announced it, I'm like, no, I'm giving you a fake name.
Yeah, that's my lawyer
Yeah,
name.
it's
My
stage
in
name.
court
Yeah.
name, yes, my stage name. That's right. Well, Julie, what else you got on your list there? You got more for us?
Oh,
We're counting on you for the whole show now,
yeah,
aren't we?
I'm
waiting for you to break into your comedic routine here shortly.
Here's my routine. One other thing that, I really could go on and on and on. In the original version we saw of this bill, there was a laundry list of financial disclosures required for businesses, and there wasn't any listing of what was going to be done for that information. But if you were going to get a business license, you had to turn over just troves of personal financial information. That has been taken out, but it allows the Department of Health to write rules to require disclosure of financial information and documents by businesses. So I see that as, passing the buck on to the Department of Health so that then they can then implement.
Well, I remember
rules.
having that exact conversation with John Eccles about taking that out of there because, and my justification was, we want the people who have been doing this in the dark for so long to come out of the dark and do it legally. And the only way we could do that is to not ask where their money comes from. Although we do accept the fact that that does, unfortunately, let a lot of dirty money in. But if it brings some people out of the illegal world and into the legal world, we thought it was worth it. But I did not know that somebody slipped in a thing to pass the buck to the health department to let them do it.
Yeah, it allows the health department to enact the same rules, and it talks about financial interest disclosure. And what, in my opinion, what this does is it cripples small businesses and mom and pops, the people like you have said who've been growing in the dark for 20 or 30 years, and it favors larger corporations. I will say there is a provision in here that says you cannot get a business license if you are a publicly traded company or more than 25% of your ownership still out of state. So that is good, but it still there's no need for this financial information. It's
now,
just not
I have a
necessary.
question though. Does that mean you can't? All right, the publicly traded company part. Is it they can't have any ownership, or their ownership can't be more than 25%?
Well,
Do you remember?
I'll find out.
I bet you will. You're good on the fly. I've seen you under pressure before. You can do this.
I know that the out-of-state company is limited to, it can't be more than 25% ownership. The publicly traded, let's see here. Here it is. A medical marijuana business license shall not be issued to or held by a publicly traded company. So if you're publicly traded, you can't own a medical marijuana business license.
Okay, but we already have that.
Well, this hasn't been enacted yet. So, this gets enacted if we have a publicly traded company.
We do.
I guess they'll be grandfathered in.
I know of at least one.
I don't know if they could be grandfathered in or not. It depends. I do know that I saw an article recently that showed a Canadian company owned full ownership of, was it a grow or a dispensary here in Oklahoma, which is outside the rules. And, with this being, just kind of a fledgling program, hopefully those are going to be things that, will be investigated. Because, that's another, kind of big part of this program is, this is an Oklahoma program. We want to keep the money in Oklahoma. We want to benefit Oklahoma patients, Oklahoma growers, Oklahoma product.
Now, let me ask you, because some people have suggested there's a loophole in there that while 25% of the license can't be held by an outside entity, you can write the business agreement however you want so that 99% of the company could be owned by this Canadian company you're talking about, and the other 1% could be owned by me, but I could have 75% of the license and we would be legal. Is that true?
Yes, I do believe that there are ways that absolutely that
So
can
with
be gotten
that
around.
being with it, and look, I've been fighting this battle for a while. This battle you're talking about right here with the Oklahoma, with us trying to make this about Oklahoma roots, and with that big of a loophole, is that a battle we can even win? This battle to keep out outside entities at this point? I'm seriously concerned about whether it is. What do you guys think?
You could close it. I mean, they could use more specific language that would prevent the ways around what we're discussing in terms of out-of-state ownership.
We do. I'm just pointing out some sections here she can look up while you're talking there.
I think just more specific language would be the way to do that.
Now, but wouldn't that, if you change the language now, those companies that have already invested, would they not then have a lawsuit against the state? Because the state allowed this program to operate this way for this amount of time.
If the state didn't grandfather them in or somehow make arrangements for them to continue running, I think that they possibly could.
So then they either have to be grandfathered in or they have a lawsuit.
I want to run that by Julie because she's more of the civil side of things. What do you think, Julie?
It just seems to me like we've, as a state, we're continuing to get in our own way. We've allowed things to run this way for this long, and now we're trying to change them too much for it to be smooth. There's going to be some real problems here, some big lawsuits. I think on that issue.
Yeah, they're going to have to do something because, this has already been established and has been running for, how many months has it been now? What,
September.
9?
Well, it started September.
Yeah.
September, so 6. Yeah, you're going to have businesses that are established that have got to continue.
Yeah, someone
way or
here
another.
says drawing up a contract with investors from California wouldn't be any different than doing mineral rights. I don't know anything about mineral rights, so
I mean, I can tell you under the way it's currently worded, you absolutely could do that. This tightens it somewhat because there's a definition of ownership here that gets much more specific and says if you kind of receive any benefit from the entity, even if you're not an on-paper owner, then they consider you an owner if you receive any kind of benefit. So this really tries to restrict it. It doesn't go far enough to stop that type of behavior, though.
So, John Tarkenton on here did ask a question earlier about workman's comp. How is workman's comp going to be in this? If you're somebody, I think he's curious as if you're somebody on workman's comp, are you going to be excluded from the program? Is the state not allowing that? I know I've spoke to a lot of people who are on probation and parole, and I'm finding it's a case-by-case basis, or more of even a county-by-county basis. Like Rogers County is a flat-out, no way, never going to happen as far as their people on probation or parole being allowed to get a medical marijuana card. But I know a good friend in Muskogee where they recently told her, and she's fresh out, that she could get hers as long as she remain within the law. They would have no problems. So
I'm hearing that in Oklahoma County, it's pretty much the same way, case by case, or not case by case, but like as long as your probation officer's good with it, they'll let you do it. But no, not everyone's like that. I feel like that should be addressed in the Unity Bill.
Well, I mean, I know a lot of people on, parole or probation can't drink alcohol, but, there's nothing, if they get sick, telling them they can't take their medication.
right.
And so, it just seems mind-boggling to me that that would be kept from them. There is a provision here, speaking to workman's comp, there's a provision, that says that workman's comp can't be, required to pay for medical marijuana or anything like that, but it doesn't, exclude like your eligibility for benefits under workers' comp if you are a card holder. So, there's a lot of provisions in here saying, if you're on Sooner Care or Medicaid, that it doesn't pay for your medical marijuana and things like that. And so that's pretty common, but at least, if you, are injured on the job and have a card, you're not going to lose your benefits. So that's good.
So how do you see this as a framework? Do you think that if we just make a dozen or so repairs on this, that this is something we can work with?
Well,
clearly we've got to go over some more of these in detail, and we'll continue to. But as a whole, do you see this, that I'm not happy it passed? I'd like to see it stopped in the Senate next week, go back to committee, some of this be addressed before it moves any farther, and not have to chase it with bills. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I personally, think that it could all be accomplished in a bill. Would it require a substantial overhaul of this bill? Absolutely, it would. And Collin and I were talking about this the other day. There's some parts of this bill that are good. There does need to be, some public safety measures and regulation, when it comes to some of these areas. It's just you see the special interests creeping in and, grabbing their piece of the pie everywhere. And, that's politics, but...
Yeah, they really... It almost feels like a bait and switch to some point. I know that... Well, I know a lot of us are frustrated. I know I'm frustrated. I know some people are not. Some people I thought would be are okay with this.
Well, I think you have a lot of single interest people.
Yeah.
If this one thing has changed, then I don't care. But I think most of us have to band together for the patients.
Yeah.
Because the patients drive the industry.
Right.
But this is about patients getting their medication.
What benefits the patients benefits the whole industry,
right.
Period.
And if we lose sight of that, then this really isn't medical marijuana. This is, another way to put money in people's pockets.
Yeah, the worst offensive part about that goes to what you're talking about right there, about it being about the patients. With this giving, as we were saying earlier, doctors the ability to drop you, to find out you have a card, and then use that under whatever reason they come up with to then eliminate you as a pain patient.
Right.
So,
special interest right there.
Yeah.
Pharmaceutical industry.
Any doctor can go in and look and see that you have a card, and whether it's related to that care you're receiving or not. And you're absolutely right, Collin. It reeks of special interest, and in some cases a conflict of interest. If you're getting good medical treatment with your, marijuana, you're not going to need all the doctor and so many visits and all of that.
The depression medication, the anxiety medication, it can help so much. It's taking money from them, but it's about damn time.
So you think that some of this fight we're getting from the doctors is actually the pharmaceutical companies putting the doctors up to it? Because we all know the doctors get a lot of money from the pharmaceutical companies, so...
Follow the money,
I'm just thinking out loud. I'm not trying to be accusatory here. I'm just thinking out loud. Because that's an industry that is getting hurt drastically. I saw a story not long ago about opioid sales dropping 20-25% in states with medical marijuana programs.
And one of the opioid manufacturers recently declared bankruptcy. I think Purdue recently declared bankruptcy. And, there's, here in Oklahoma, we have litigation against opioid manufacturers. So absolutely.
Yeah.
They're hurting.
Yeah, well, oh well, they should be.
It,
so are we.
Well, and
so are we.
Yeah.
Chris, one other thing, talk about hurting. The one big issue that this bill also doesn't fix is the tax issue. And that was incredibly disappointing to me because so many people who rely on this medicine are on fixed incomes and don't have the money to pay double taxation. 788 provided for a 7% sales tax. It called it a sales tax. the tax commission came in and said, that's not really a sales tax, that's an excise tax, and we're going to charge regular sales tax on top of that. 788 was very explicit what they were doing. This bill does not address that, which is just going to leave it for the way the tax commission is administering it. And there's really hints in here that this bill doesn't go so far to say, 788 sales tax and then the 788, excise tax they're calling it, but it references the excise tax, which in such a way that that's what they're trying to get at. And
now, last week I was up there fighting this tax thing, which, believe me, that is beating your head against the wall. Trying to get them to let loose of a way they can take money. Oh man, even your friends are looking at you like you're crazy. So what I was told was that, and John Eccles said this on a live video I did outside the meeting room, that because of some agreement that we're in, some multi-state agreement we're in, if we charge an excise tax, we have to allow cities to charge and counties to charge their tax. Does that make any sense to you as somebody who used to work with the tax commission?
It does. But again, that's based upon them categorizing it as an excise tax.
Which again explains why we need to change the name of it. But what that does is that sets up, and then Pemberton, Pemberton, Paxton was I had a meeting with Paxton, and he had a bill, I don't remember where it's at right now, but he had a bill that was supposed to set it where the state would not take any more than the 7%. Okay? So, if the state takes a 7% tax, then, according to what John said, that allows the cities and counties to charge their tax. So, where the city or where the state normally only charges 4.5 cents, they've agreed to only take the 7 and to continue to allow the cities and counties to charge as much as they want. Currently, they're only charging their normal tax. They can, however, pass an additional pot tax.
Oh my gosh!
So, at the very least, even if it was just that, and there was no other pot tax added at city and county levels, we're going to end up with 11 to 12% taxes on cannabis, because you're looking at the 7 plus it's 4.5 to 5. Some a little higher in counties, city and county combined.
Right.
So,
how does that compare to elsewhere in the nation?
They all have either no or lower medical tax than standard tax. Colorado, I think medical tax is 9%. And again, if they could find a way to lower it to the standard tax, even that would be livable. That would be something it would be upsetting, because we don't tax other medicines that require a doctor to be involved.
You're right. Okay? Pharmaceuticals are not subject to sales tax. Tylenol is, but it's a regular sales tax, and so marijuana is,
Right. So it's getting the pot tax right there.
It absolutely is. It's punitive.
Yeah, but they're saying it's our fault because we put the 7% in the bill. It's just a cop-out, but that's what I was told.
Word games.
Yeah, that's what I was told. You'd be surprised what you hear
Word
up there.
Word games in the state of Oklahoma? No.
Never heard of such a thing.
I'm reading comments. Everybody's commenting. We got lots of people watching. Thank you for watching, folks. They probably didn't hear me say it earlier, though. If you want to call in, 918-304-1956. If my phone's getting a reception, it comes in and out. Luckily, that his phone's getting a reception, so we're getting a good show, and we're talking to everybody. So that's what matters. All right. Somebody's bringing up Section 8 housing here.
How this affects Section 8?
Why don't you just fill in the blanks?
Section 8, go.
Or if you want to see who's asking, you can. I got a couple of these here. I didn't bring one for you. Sorry.
Sorry.
I mean, yeah, this is just essentially saying that, if you're on any governmental assistance program, you don't get reimbursed for the costs of medical marijuana, and that's, been well established.
Yeah, you might set that over there, and you guys can both see that. We can all see what everybody's saying.
Would this be a good time to take a a break.
This would be a great time to take a break. Let's see. Hang on a second. So All right, folks, we're back. I had to take a little break. I was getting a little cold. I had to put my grumpy coat on.
Getting a little grumpy.
You notice my jacket says grumpy on it?
Yeah, I think it's ugly.
Everybody. What?
How appropriate.
God, there she goes again. Man, I think it's pretty cool.
I would like it if I had one.
Would you?
Hint, hint.
Well, we'll have to see about that. We'll work on that. We'll get one for everybody. Hey, so we were talking during the break about criminal justice reform, and since you were a criminal lawyer before,
Still am.
still am, and aren't all lawyers criminals? Oh wait,
I see what you did there.
I'm the funny one. I'm the funny one. All right, so tell us a little bit about what you're seeing here.
Well, in terms of criminal justice reform, I'm seeing nothing at all. But what I'm seeing that is an issue in here is that this bill gives the Department of Health so much authority to police all these businesses. It's
You talking about where she was saying earlier they can go in and without any reason, or
right, like
or on suspicion, I guess would be the reason. Suspicion.
Right, but first we have to keep in mind that this is the Department of Health. It's not a law enforcement agency.
Right.
So they provide for numerous personnel and such in here, but none of these would be CLEAT certified law enforcement officers. And so they're having them essentially police these businesses and look for crimes and such, but that is the purview of law enforcement. So like Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics.
So you're saying that they're putting law enforcement into the health department?
Essentially.
Is that how you see it, Julie?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I talked about before, it allows them, on any suspicion that, evidence is going to be destroyed, they can go in at any time without notice. In the practice of law, that requires a search warrant.
Right.
Here, the health department can do that for no reason. They can, it's not just inspections, it's subpoena power, it's investigatory power, and there's also this provision in here that allows them to take other remedies as is appropriate, which essentially is legalese for, we can go in and search, and if we think you're doing something we don't like or shady, we can seize all your stuff.
Civil forfeiture. Yeah.
Really?
And the license holder is left with very few remedies. They can appeal it, but
but it also, letting them do that without a warrant is a violation of privacy. You've got search and seizure issues all over that.
And two, these duties that are being performed, Collin, correct me if I'm wrong, but this doesn't require CLEAT certified officers. You could have somebody straight out of high school going in and
right. It just, they would have to work for the Department of Health as an investigator or a compliance officer, maybe.
Grumpy, that should be your job.
A compliance officer?
Yeah.
I don't know about that. No, I want to go out and spread some love to the people. I'm not here to be police on the people. I'm here to be grumpy with the lawmakers. That's how that works.
There's another provision in here that we were talking about on the break, added to business licenses. Collin, you want to talk about that one regarding the taxes and business licenses?
So under this bill, you can't owe any taxes. Like, so let's say you were a dispensary and you owe medical marijuana tax that you haven't paid yet. It would prevent you from then getting another license, say like a processing or a grow license. However, it only says that you can't, that you would be prohibited from applying if you owe medical marijuana tax. It doesn't say anything about like personal income tax or
business taxes, sales taxes.
So you can owe $1 million in past state sales taxes and fees and fines, and still apply.
Right,
and
but
get a license.
And get a license. Great, I'll apply tomorrow.
But if
No,
you,
I'm kidding.
but if you owe a penny of marijuana, they're singling out and taking punitive measures again.
A pot tax.
Right.
Another pot tax.
but it's also, I mean, that's just bad for business. It curbs business opportunities here in the state.
Now, my concern is about that, the business opportunities. What I'm seeing with these regulations and with these fees and with these hurdles we're getting thrown at us is the black market flourishing again. That now not only is the black market flourishing because it's always been there anyway, but now they have all these new customers because everybody has a card, and it's so much cheaper.
Yeah.
So we've got two choices. We fix this and fix our law and have a workable program, or we have once again we go back to having not only the most incarcerated people in the country, but the most flourishing black market in the country, just like we had before this passed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with all these taxes, all these new fees, all of it prices people out of the market, especially for patients. Like Julie was saying about people on a fixed income.
Right.
Like right now, they can't afford it.
Yeah, I speak to a lot of people on a regular basis that get $700 a month to live on. And they're my age or older, they're disabled, they can barely eat as it is. They somehow get their younger relatives or someone to give them enough money to go get their card. And then at best they can buy a gram every now and then and try it. They find out that it works, but they can't afford to get it on a regular basis. I mean, it goes back to why I started doing this to begin with. Home grow.
Right.
Everybody, and again, some of those people, though, they can't grow it at home. They can't afford it. But we are going to feed the black market and kill all the businesses with these taxes because we have the home grow. Because so many people like myself will just walk away from the businesses and say, I'll go grow my own. We'll use them for a year or two while we get started, learn what we're doing, and then we'll be done with the businesses. Unless the businesses are worth it to us, that doesn't come at a high price. I mean, not to us. We want inexpensive, good quality, good service. I realize that's greedy, but we want it all. So I don't see anything wrong with that.
This bill also requires seed to sale tracking, which, speaking to some of the black market.
You guys can have that one. Oh, you had yours, didn't you? You can have that.
Speaking, to keeping at least black market product out of processors and dispensaries, seed to sale will do a lot of that. But it doesn't fix the exact problem that you're talking about, and it adds on an additional cost, as well as we mentioned before, seed to sale tracking requires, the logging of every commercial transaction. So every time a patient goes to a dispensary and buys product, that's logged and saved forever. So your purchasing history, is there for the government to have forever. And so that really, in that respect, doesn't curb the black market issue that they're trying to hit with seed to sale. And it, forces additional costs on to the business owner.
Do you know
and
what
the
the seed to sale cost is? I spoke to somebody the other day. I don't know how many of you out there are having to deal with this yet, but I spoke to somebody yesterday about this, and he's paying about $1,200 a month.
Whew.
Now under the circumstances, we thought he was getting a pretty good deal because he actually has all three businesses: process, grow, and dispensary. So, but still, that's $400 a month per business minimum, and it's only that cheap because he's got all three. It's an integrated system. So I'm hearing $800-900 and up minimum from other businesses per month.
Oh, we just had somebody say that seed to sale systems are $4,500 to $10,000 to start up.
Well, I haven't heard about any large startups yet, Maybe because I've also heard that there's not a program out there that you can buy outright, that they're all a service, because that way they can get you on the monthly fees.
Yeah, they keep you hooked for life. You have to continue paying that. And, when you look at it at the business aspect, and I look at the business aspect because it affects the patient bottom line.
Yeah.
Is that, you've got the businesses that, while our license fees are some of the lowest across the nation, when you add in, seed to sale and all the regulation here, not to mention the fact that, there's, marijuana is still legal at the federal level, and so you have to, structure your business in such a way that you can get around some of that and lower your tax burden. So much of this is passed on to the patient, and this just piles onto it. And it just doesn't have to be this way.
Well, the same guy, Johnny Harrington, that was talking about the 4,500 to 10,000, said that that's with or without hardware.
Oh, so that's not even point of sale systems or
Right.
computers.
That's crazy. And they've got to recoup that cost somehow.
Well, what we need is for it not to matter what program you use, as long as it's efficient. And if that allows, does that allow that? I mean, how does that end up in here? Is there a certain system we have to use, or is there a certain amount of time to do this? It doesn't give time to develop other systems, or do you know?
So I believe that this bill would be a November 1 effective date. It does not give a grace period on the seed to sale system. There are certain, I believe it sets forth system requirements that are kind of well known in the industry, and
Right.
the system has to meet those. And it also has to be one that, they've certified as being able to integrate with the health department and everyone's systems. And so, again, to me,
Having to integrate with the health department system?
well, to report, the inventory.
So this is going to be a system where every time I make a purchase, a bell goes off at the health department.
Yes. Yes, and
No matter where in the state I make that purchase, a bell's going to go off in the health department. Or an angel gets its wings. Be a lot of angels.
Yeah.
and the way it's written right now is that the dispensary only keeps that information for 2 years, but it doesn't speak to how long the health department keeps your purchase information.
Why does a dispensary need to keep that information for 2 years?
I believe
Now this goes back to when you and I first met. We were sitting across the table arguing about these things, only you were on the other side.
I don't remember what you're talking about.
Okay, go ahead. You were saying. I just thought of that. I just remember having this conversation before, only getting a different answer.
Well, I believe that the dispensary, the way this is written, the dispensary only needs that information in case the government comes in and questions them. Inventory, making sure that, you're buying and buying it off where you're supposed to, and you're selling it and there isn't any loss.
I wonder, though, if they want to keep those records for longer, possibly because, like, if you had a recall or something, so that they could note. I mean, but, 2 years is kind of long for that.
When we met, we were talking about 90 days, and I was good with 90 days. And there's no reason for them to have that information more than 90 days. Now, some said, well, they may need it, and dispensaries I know a lot of dispensaries are wanting to keep a lot of information, so I've had this conversation with them too, and they say, well, we want to keep this information so we can help you when you come back in. You can say, hey, I remember when I tried this stuff, here's when it was, can you tell me what it was, and we can look up what that is. Well, here's the thing, if I come in only once every 90 days, it's just not, I'm not that much, I mean, really.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't need to know. You don't. If I'm coming in weekly or month or even bi-weekly or, whatever, and you're helping me figure out what kind helps, that's fine. But, I mean, I just think we're going back a little far, in my opinion. It's like keeping too much information.
It's like overkill. I mean, most people, I would assume, go into dispensaries having an idea of what they want.
Most people, not a lot. I mean, there is a lot of truly sick people out there that don't know what they're using, and they do need help when they get in there. But when we when we fought about this last year, one of the things we were concerned about was privacy. And one of the things that I remember was this 24-digit code was supposed to be so that you didn't have to keep anything else. And then all of a sudden, we passed this law and we opened dispensaries, and everybody goes in, and the first thing they say is, okay, let me scan your driver's license and your card. Well, they can't scan your card. They have to put that in. But they scan your driver's license. What was the card number for, if not to keep him from scanning my driver's license?
Right. Well, and in addition, jumping off what you've said there, this bill, 788 says, patient submits everything for a patient license. Department of Health gives them the license, isn't supposed to keep any of the documentation. This bill changes that in that all patient information, your doctor recommendation, anything you else send in is going to be retained by the health department. It's limited who can look at it, but now it's being retained. And so the government, is going to have, personal health information on anybody who has a medical marijuana license.
They wouldn't have that on any other medicine, would they?
No, I mean, the PMP, the prescription monitoring database, they have that. So, anytime you go to a pharmacy and get, narcotics or anything like that, they have that. But the information here in the physician recommendation, it asks, it's optional right now, but I see that changing. It asks for, the underlying reason. Are you getting it for pain? Are you getting anxiety?
Right.
That's not information in the PMP. And keep in mind that any doctor can call in of yours and know that information.
And find out why you got your card
Right.
and if you have a card.
And so it's just, in my mind, we're just losing, personal liberties and privacy with the storage of this, the storage of application and sales data.
Well, and with no good justification.
Right, just because we want it and just like the financial information for businesses, the original draft of 2612 required all this financial disclosure. Didn't say what the health department was going to do with it, or if you were disqualified in any way. They just want this information, and so now the health department gets to write those rules to get this financial information. Well, businesses are operating and doing fine without them having this information. So why is it needed?
So they're getting everything that they wanted that we fought against. They're just getting it in little bits and pieces from other departments.
Yes, and I would say that it's, trying to be massaged in such a way that it's a little bit more palatable. And, but, those of us who, really look at it and dig in,
See the loopholes.
we see the, you see the special interest, you see the loophole, you see the game here.
So, with all the problems you see, how many bills do you think we need to? How many shell bills is it going to take? Considering, can all this go in one shell bill? I'm curious. Does that still stay under the single subject rule?
It would, yeah. The single subject rule says, you can write a bill a bill has to focus on one subject. Well, this bill's medical marijuana.
Right.
So
it
everything
stays,
could be
that works.
handled under this bill. For some reason, they're choosing not to, and it just makes sense to get it all done in one bill, because the chances of both sides agreeing and getting through committee bills on little one-off issues is the chance of me, becoming a nationwide gymnast. It's not going to happen.
So we haven't talked about banking. What do you know about banking in this bill? Is there anything at all in there for banking? Have we addressed banking at all?
There is some stuff in here about banking, but the biggest issue in this industry regarding banking is not at the state level. It's at the federal level. And so you've got maybe a handful of banks here in Oklahoma that will, maybe not even a handful. I'm aware of 1, 2.
Okay, so by saying that, are you saying that we can't do anything about it at the state level other than put pressure on the federal government to fix it?
Well, sort of. So you've got banks.
Sounds like a lawyer answer.
Yeah, it does. He's got a lot of those, and he tries to talk slow like a lawyer too.
So you've got.
He's going to get over that.
Maybe.
We're gonna work on him. He'll get over it.
But you've got banks that are federally insured, and then you've got state chartered banks, and that are not federally insured. And so, what's in here would apply more to your state chartered banks. Banks that are federally insured are going to have to abide by federal guidelines. Federal guidelines don't prohibit banking this industry, but make it very difficult in terms of you have to have a program that oversees these accounts, like down to the smallest details.
And, Collin and I have had clients call into our practice in the last 2 weeks who, every week they're having to go to a different bank to try to set up their, medical marijuana business, because once that bank finds out it's cannabis money, they're shutting the account down, they're cutting a cashier's check, and they're out. I have another prospective client who owns a commercial property in Oklahoma and opening a dispensary there. There were some other businesses too, and now the bank has called the note because it's a cannabis business. If we can get some state chartered banks to open, we have laws that allow state chartered banks, but we need, somebody with enough money to open a bank.
Right.
Is the problem. And so, there's language in here that the, state banking department's going to work with the treasurer to, come up with ways to,
So you think we're looking at 1 to 2 years before the state does anything in the banking area?
I think that you'll see the federal government open it up probably in 1 to 2 years.
There is a way for state investors to come in and do it, but the state leaders' hands are really tied. There's really not much they can do in that respect.
And crazy thing is, I actually get calls from people on a weekly basis saying what you just said, that the bank just figured out that it was somehow tied to cannabis, and they showed up to a cashier's check and a boot in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
We had a client that something like 7, 8 banks already.
Had cycled through that many already.
Yeah.
And, really puts not only the business owner, but, their patients coming into the store in danger, because people are knowing that kind of money, cash money, is laying around.
Yeah, and we're doing nothing about it, but we're doing what we can to make sure the doctors have plenty of power.
Mm-hmm. And we're making sure that the state gets a big old cut of that cash. Double what they should.
Double dipping.
Yeah.
I've noticed that everybody seems to want a piece.
Mm-hmm.
And once they get their piece, they seem to be okay with it. So I have a suggestion, and I've suggested this before. In fact, I think I was sitting here once when I suggested this. Oh, wait, but that time I think we may have had a computer crash. Yeah. So you guys maybe didn't hear that. Anyway, I've said it before. Maybe it's time we just have full access, because if they're going to tax us like it's recreational, well,
might as well be.
Full access. Maybe it's time we run another petition. Maybe it's time to start planning on signatures for this summer. Maybe it's time to figure out a way to get this done sooner rather than later. So what do you guys think? You think that's a good idea? You're sitting there like you're afraid to answer there. Come on, jump in and say something.
It
what
makes
do you think?
sense
Full access?
If they're going to tax it like it's recreational.
Well, and the way regulatorily they're setting all of this up, it's going to be so strongly regulated that I don't see any downside in the public interest at that point, because there's this huge robust structure there, and it's being taxed like it is. So why not?
It's not a big step once you've got that framework.
So if everybody has got to get their piece out of the medical, if only having a medical program in the state means everybody has to get a chunk, making it the most expensive medical program in the country, then maybe if they need their money, then let's just have a full access petition, and let's give them their tax money, and I bet you half of this stuff would go away.
Yeah, and the sad thing is if you look at the state's general revenue report right now, our revenue is exceeding projections. And so, there's enough money to go around and fund core services. This just comes down to greed and for all these, specific interest groups.
I saw a news report, I want to say it was yesterday or the day before, that said that the jump in medical marijuana sales from January to February was something like from 4 million to 7. Like, it's breaking in tons of money. I mean, why can't?
Yeah, but that's not enough.
No,
That's
it's
just not enough.
that's greed.
Yeah. Well, I know there's another bill which I said was I think is a carve out. It's been explained to me that it's how they intend. It has something to do with stopping diversion. I don't know how it's going to work, but that is this disposal bill. Now, the good news on that side is, and that's Scott Fettgetter's bill, and I've had multiple conversations with him about this, is he's trying to get cannabis stems, seeds, and leaves removed or excluded from waste. Mm-hmm. So you won't have to account, because we're going to turn that back into process. I mean, that's going to get used. There's no waste.
Right.
So if you can get that excluded, maybe the bill doesn't hurt as bad. But as we were talking about earlier, there's going to be 10 licenses given out.
10 disposal licenses. And don't you know the recipients are already handpicked?
You think?
And it doesn't say Julie Ezell on mine.
You don't think so? Well, I would think that was crazy, other than the fact that I remember hearing that they felt they deserved a carve out, was the words that were used in explaining it to me.
Oh.
They feel like they deserve a carve out. And I was just shocked that I was being told that they just wanted money, and so we were just going to give it to them.
We just want our piece of the pie.
And this wasn't by Scott, so Scott, if you're out there, and you probably are, don't get mad at me. That wasn't you who said that. So
It's like, here, we're entitled.
that's
how does that work?
I feel like there's too much of that in here.
Can I get a carve out, Chris?
I'll give you one. You can have a carve out. We'll make a carve out for Julie.
On one of these new bills.
Yeah.
I want one as well.
On one of these new bills. We'll all have one for us. The activist carve out.
Truly, it's disgusting, and that's politics. Sadly, that's the way it is. This program should be about patience and about quality of life, and instead, everybody wants their piece of the pie.
What's upsetting to me, understandable, but it is upsetting, is so many people are willing to accept that.
Right.
I'm not surprised that so many people are demanding their piece of the pie. What I'm surprised about is so many people that are going, okay, if that's what it takes.
And then yeah.
It's almost like they, 788 passed, and they feel like, okay, well, it's passed now. Like, we can watch
some
it.
feel like, seems like some feel like, once 788 passed, that was it, and we can live with all this other stuff. And I just think that, as you were saying earlier, why do we have to chase this with repair bills when we could repair this easily in this bill? So perhaps we all need to put, as we've been saying, more pressure on our senators between now and next week. And on that note, I want to point something else out that I was told the other day at the Capitol, and that was one of the senators on the committee that we called out to talk to about the list of things the quick list that I'd drawn up the other night of things that I'd seen wrong with this, or people had told me were wrong with this, that I put together the other night. And she said, just blatantly, on no certain terms, she said, when she gets there every morning and she goes through her emails, if it's not her constituents, she puts those right in the archives, and she never gets back to them. So it's doing absolutely zero good, a big fat goose egg, to send emails to senators other than our own. The senators just will not take the time to open those. She made it clear that that's how they all do it.
Can I jump in here and just take about 30 seconds to speak to something that I saw on Facebook last night? I will say that, we all know that Representative Eccles has spent a lot of time on this bill, and he, from what I have seen, has made himself very accessible to not only his constituents, but any Oklahoman. And I've seen him responding on Facebook pages and, taking input and everything like that. And, I know that he has children, and the amount of time that he's put into this, while we all may not agree, he has put a lot of time into this, and he is one that I've seen that, unlike the person you're describing, will, at least hear you out and, respond and think about it. And I appreciate that. It's refreshing. Do you always get the answer you want? No, but it's nice to have, somebody who's at least listening, because so many of them don't.
Well, it's nice to have a representative that's representing.
Yeah.
I mean, archiving.
Yeah. And I've seen him in the hallways. He'll give as much time as needed to anybody that stops and talk to him, as long as they're from Oklahoma. Probably wouldn't matter if they wouldn't, but I've never seen anybody from out of state talk to him. And sometimes I start to wonder, is he ever going to stop? I mean, he just keeps talking and talking and talking. He has no problem giving you all the time he can. Scott Fetgetter's pretty good about that too, and they've both worked their butts off, as well as a bunch of others have worked their butts off to get us here. It just feels to me like because I spend a lot of time talking with them and others, and it just feels like a lot has been slipped in at the last minute that wasn't necessary. And the problem is that he's the floor leader. He's not just the cannabis lawmaker. He's the floor leader. He's got 100 other things he's dealing with at the same time. He can't get to every one of these things. Every one that I throw at him, he tries to address. But, he's pointed out multiple times, and I've been trying to point it out to everybody else, we've got to find other people to help him. He needs a lot more help than what he's getting. He really does. He's getting a lot of great help from Scott Fetgetter and what's his name? I always have trouble pronouncing it. Rosekrantz.
Oh, Rosekrantz, Jacob Rosekrantz.
Jacob Rosekrantz. He's been a big help, and a few others have been a big help. And the people in the joint committee last summer, they were all pretty helpful and all fairly open-minded. But I said it last summer, and I'm going to say it again. The senators in that committee were just giving us lip service.
They were just there.
They watched our behavior for the last 6 months, and then they started writing rules and accepting opinions from others whose opinions we had maybe beaten off some, had gotten back, gotten them to not listen to things like the work-related, the safety-sensitive jobs. I thought that whole thing with the Chamber of Commerce, I thought everybody saw it for what it was, reefer madness. But
the OBN registration, remember, initially you didn't have to get the OBN registration, and then it flipped.
Yeah.
And so it's, I agree with you. I think, two things. This is real politics, and this is the way it works. And we'd like this, whatever provision to be stricken, but these politicians have to work deals. I'll give you this if you'll vote for it, and then you end up with something like that. And sadly, this is how it works. But I think most important for us is to not be one issue on this, and to band together and demand the right bill, not just the bill that protects our own one personal interest.
Yeah.
And kind of looking forward to next week, Chris, this is going to be heard, is it going to be heard on Monday?
On the Senate floor on Monday.
On Monday. So, leading up into that, what do you encourage people to do? To contact their representatives?
Contact your own particular senator. Call your own senator, email your own senator, find a way to get a hold of your own senator, and then maybe also the Senate leaders. I hand delivered some letters to them, to each one of them yesterday. One of them even told me, I already have 3 copies of that. I said, well, now you have a copy with my phone number on it. So there you go.
And I will say, I've heard this time and time again, you physically going in person to talk to your representative or senator, yes, do you have to take time off work? Is it a big ordeal? But that really does, that face-to-face makes a difference and makes an impression on them. And, as many of us that can do that between now and Monday, that's going to help.
Well, if we don't, I've suggested maybe in private conversations, I've suggested maybe some dispensaries, like, every single one of them, close down for the day and go to the Capitol, all on one day. I think we'd call that, maybe a rally. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do something like that. But I know everybody's busy making money, and it's not that easy. We have family, we have kids, we have things to do. But if we don't do something drastic like a rally, then this is just how it's going to be. So if you're okay with this, I guess then you're okay with this.
And I think what you're saying points to a bigger issue in that this is still an education issue for the legislature. So many of them still have, the typical pothead in their mind. They need to see the real face, the real patient, the real children, the people. They see that it's an education issue that just aren't aware.
I overheard, I have to throw this in there, I overheard a conversation, I won't say who it was between, but it was a former lawmaker who is now a lobbyist, was talking about how all the members of the Senate were mad because they had seen a picture in the newspaper this weekend of a girl with a pot leaf, a face painting of a pot leaf on her face. Now, I've heard that in the story it says the lady is actually 18 years old. She does look fairly young, but this feeds their reefer madness. Mm-hmm. This is what, as she says, they need to be educated. They take that and think the worst. Mm-hmm. They just jump to conclusions with that. So we have to educate them, and in person is really the best way if you can. If you can't call or email your own senator, because, again, the other senators aren't going to listen.
I think it'd also be good to, people that have, your lives have changed because you don't either have to take opioids or, cancer or whatnot. I think it would really benefit, and it might really help educate some of these legislators for those people to come out and tell their story. There's lots of places out there. You can even do videos that they'll get to the lawmakers. This is rather urgent, so I would suggest getting in the video to them yourselves, or just going down there if you can. And
remember, they won't be there on Friday. They don't typically work on Fridays. So tomorrow, call, email. I know a lot of people are planning to show up in the gallery on Monday, when they're taking the vote. That's really too late. They're going to see you, but that's really too late.
Right. Yeah, we have to show up beforehand and tell them how to vote. Mm-hmm. If we show up afterward, all we do is watch them vote. Right. And I can assure you, a lot of them said yesterday they'd already decided they were going to vote for it. There was nothing we could do. So, I am concerned this is going to pass. And if this does pass, if enough of us don't get them to stop it, and it does pass, we're going to have to take on all these trailer bills and fix every one of these issues, or live with this until next year. I don't want to live with this till next year.
I mean, do you want any doctor being able to see your recommendation? Do you want to be able to lose it at any time? Do you, no doctors at dispensaries? Do you want the health department to be able to come in and take your license and your goods at any time for any reason?
I don't think that's what we wanted. I don't think that had anything to do with the Unity plan either. So, okay, well, you guys think we should wrap it up? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, last call for questions. I haven't seen any come through.
Well, they're all talking, but I haven't seen any questions either.
I'm seeing a lot of rally. Let's get there and show our support. So hopefully people will.
If enough of you can agree to be there on Monday, we can have a rally Monday. But again, we got to be there early, because we've got to get to them before they get on the floor. Because if we wait until after, or until they're on the floor, yes, we can call them out from the floor, as you saw us do on that video the other day, yesterday. But as you saw, they don't change their mind. So at that point, we're too late. So I think that's going to be about it for today. I want to try and get you guys to come do this on at least a bi-monthly basis. Maybe they'll get used to the idea. They'll get their questions ready. We'll see how this progresses, and I'm betting everybody will figure out how to call in and all that.
Do I have to be nice if I come back?
You have to be nice, and you can even be funny.
Yeah, we'd love to.
You have to be nice to me, though. You can't go after the beard.
Anybody but the beard.
You can't go after the beard. That's come on. There's one
No.
thing, you just don't touch the beard.
I love coming on here, and I love talking with you, Chris. You are a great advocate for the patients, and that's where your heart is, and I just have so much respect for that. So always happy to be here and give you a hard time.
I'm waiting for the punchline.
Give you a hard time.
All right, we'll get it later.
Well, thanks for having us.
Okay,
Really,
well, I'm
enjoyed
glad
it.
you guys are here. All right, folks, first again, I want to thank the sponsors because, again, if I didn't have any sponsors, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd just be sitting at home complaining a lot, and my son is sick of that. So thank you to the Greens Bakery in Oklahoma City. Thank you to Sweetleaf in Bartlesville. And I want to say Sweetleaf in Bartlesville has just put out their own RSO oil. The Greens Bakery, she is also working on some. Hers isn't ready to go over out the door yet, but she's working on it. It just needs a couple more weeks, I think. But if you're up in the Bartlesville area, I know that's one of the things that I get requests for the most is RSO oil. So go see them, and they've, of course, got lab tests on everything. So, and then again, our newest sponsors, Canalaw Group here in Oklahoma City, which is sitting right next to me, Julie Ezell and Collin Rocket. It's going to be easy to remember. Collin Rocket.
We call it his porn star name.
Yes, that's it. It's his porn star name. There we go. We thought we were going to keep it family friendly, but there's Julie at the end. All that time and Julie at the end. I knew it would happen.
Thank you, Julie.
and Max's Garage in Oklahoma City, and Moto here at the Bunker in Oklahoma City. I said Max's in Oklahoma City, didn't I? I meant Max's in Muskogee. Yeah, you
Max's
guys know
is
where
great.
it's at.
I've been there. It's a great place.
They are. All right, so that's going to be it for tonight, folks. Stay grumpy. I'll see you on the road.